Hello. Now when I hopefully get your undivided attention, I have a confession to make. This is obviously a clickbait title. Well, it's actually correct title, just not complete one. Well, so, yes, I'm obviously going to talk about IPv6 even when I'm talking about DNS. So, how many of you deploy IPv6-only networks? Good. You need to listen, and people who hasn't, if you haven't raised your hand, you still need to listen, because eventually we will need to deploy v6-only networks, and then my lightning talk will be important. So, if you deploy v6-only networks, most likely your endpoints need to run CLAT, so all those legacy, poorly written applications which need v4 will be tricked into believing they have IPv4, and then the CLAT customer-side translation will translate everything to IPv6 and send it over the physical interface. So here is what I see on my laptop when I connect to RIPE network this week, right? Obviously, to do the translation, the client needs to know which NAT64 prefix is being used by the network. So, because when CLAT translates v4 to v6, somewhere in the network there is a NAT64 which will be translating it back to IPv4 and send it to dual stack internet. So as you can see, my laptop successfully gets NAT64 prefix from the network. So traditionally, for the last 11 years, a lot of networks and a lot of clients were using RFC 7050, which allows you to detect NAT64 prefix by using our favorite protocol, DNS, right? DNS can be used for anything, not just for name resolution. You also can use it for detecting NAT64 prefix. How it happens? Your client trying to resolve IPv4 only name and trying to ask for v6 address of that well-known v4 only name, right? So here what's happening on this network, right? Network announce you DNS server. If you ask normal DNS, let's say Google public DNS, you ask for a record for v4 only ARPA, you get an IPv4 address. Special one allocated by IANA. If you ask for quad A, obviously you get nothing because it's an IPv4 only name. Logically, right? Now let's ask DNS server which RIPE's network gives you, which is actually does DNS64. Surprise, surprise, you actually getting quad A record back, and you can double check those last 32 bits are actually v4 addresses in hex format. So now your client can take the prefix from the quad A record and find out which prefix shall be used. Great, right? What could possibly go wrong? First of all, there is I know Jeff told us security doesn't matter, but the problem is you kind of rely on DNS, right? And this thing fundamentally would not work with DNSSEC because DNS64 designed to lie to you. You're asking for something which does not exist. So RFC 7050 has a security consideration section and does talk about security, but it's a very, very hand-wavy. Like, yeah, you need somehow to establish trust channel to your DNS server, somehow. It suggests using some security channel like VPN. So I have not seen anyone doing this. So yeah, so you don't know actually, are you really getting the correct answer? And obviously the problem is if your client is actually on v4 only network, which doesn't have v6 security, and someone tricked you into believing there is a DNS64 and NAT64, things could go very, very wrong, right? So there are actually other things which could go wrong. For example, if I take my laptop and try to resolve IPv4 only ARPA and get quad A, I am actually getting nothing. Why? Because my laptop runs its own local resolver. So my laptop completely ignores what networks gives you as a DNS server and run its local stuff. Well, there is an RFC which suggests that local resolver actually needs to look in the network provided resolver for resolving is specifically v4 only ARPA, but again, nobody does that. And obviously, as I say, no DNSSEC, additional RTT, and so on. So a few months ago, some people were thinking, can we solve this, at least this security problem of 7050? And when we started talking about that, we realized that maybe we don't need to solve the problem of RFC 7050 because we have other ways of discovering NAT64 prefix. Again, if you look what this network actually gives you, it gives you NAT64 prefix together with all other configuration for your network stack. Well, if you ask me, obviously it's much better way because I wrote that standard. So I'm definitely biased. But yeah, I like getting everything in one array packet, yes. So now we have competing standards. Great, right? We have multiple ways of doing the same thing. And one of them gives you everything in one packet immediately, and another one does not work with DNSSEC, has security problem, and gives you additional RTT. So what can we do? The obvious solution is, let's get rid of 7050. Well, as always with IPv6, we have chicken and egg problem, right? It's really hard to tell people, please don't do 7050, because there are networks which have been doing that and not giving you prefix for and router advertisement. And maybe there are clients which do not do prefix for yet. However, the goal of this document is actually can be summarized in 2 sentences, right? If you're doing IPv6-only network, please, please, please give prefix for to your clients in router advertisements, right? You can keep your DNS64 for legacy clients and so on, but please provide prefix for, because it's actually better for clients. Clients can start CLAT much faster without waiting for DNS exchange, right? And it improves security. And if you're writing a client, please rely on prefix for first, even coming in router advertisement, and maybe only use DNS as a backup mechanism. So this will be presented in Dublin next week in DNS Op on Monday. And that's all for me.